Hello, and welcome to Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Church in Pasadena. Welcome to all members, friends, and guests. My name is Mara Lepaluoto, and I am a member of your Board of Trustees. Neighborhood Church creates and grows an inclusive community of faith connected by love, spirit, and service. We acknowledge our presence on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples, the traditional caretakers of the lands and waters of this campus. With respect for the rights and wisdom of Indigenous people, we acknowledge our harmful colonial histories and commit to decolonizing our own practices, to learning new ways of being in community, in good relationship with the Indigenous people of this land and with the land itself. Today's service is led by our minister, Reverend Dr. Omega Burkhart, with music by Music Director Dr. Zaneta Robles and Associate Music Director Wells Lang. Please take a moment to silence your devices as we begin our service. Families with young children are welcome in the sanctuary or the narthex. The family side service is on hiatus for the summer and will return on September 17th when 2 services will resume. Let's see, a few announcements. Globe Forum will meet today at 11:15 in the dining room. Writing Group will meet today at 11 in room 23, not at 1, as it said in the newsletter. The first meeting of our new group, Fiber Artists and Textile Enthusiasts, or FATE for short, will be Friday, September 9th, so this Friday, in the living room of the Neighborhood House from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., not a.m., that would be, yeah. The group will meet bi-monthly on the second Friday of the month in the living room and on the fourth Friday of the month in a location to be determined at the meeting this Friday. The primary focus of FATE will be community building by spending time together, sharing a love of fiber and textile arts, including but not limited to knitting, crocheting, embroidery, and sewing. All ages and skill levels are welcome, but please note there will not be formal instruction or childcare. Please see the newsletter or talk with Ellen Rosenblatt or Tracy Larson for more information. Neighborhood's new women's group for all women identifying church members will begin on September 19th at 7 p.m. in the living room. In our newsletter, you can learn more about this and other spiritual exploration opportunities such as Wisdom Path, Chalice Circles, and UU Wellspring. Our order of service and many more announcements are available as a link in the Sunday email posted in the narthex or through the QR code on the back of your hymnal. You can always get more information on these and many other activities at the welcome table. Again, welcome to Neighborhood Church, whoever you are and wherever you are in your spiritual journey. Welcome to this inclusive faith community connected by love, spirit, and service.
You wake the dead to life, you fountain of grace, you fire in thickets of tangled thought. This is how the poem by Rumi, translated by Halaliza Ghaffori, begins. Today you arrived beaming with laughter, that swinging key that unlocks prison doors. You are hope's beating heart. You are a doorway to the sun. You are the one I seek and the one who seeks me, beginning and end. You greet need with generous hands. You flood us with spirit, rising from the heart, lifting thought. Rare one, you reveal the pleasure of wisdom and practice. Beyond these, what is there but excuses and deceit? We lust after the afterlife, we stew over trinkets. We stage battles between black and white, and our ears are plugged with twisted delusions. But you carry the cure. Silence, I'm in a hurry. Leave the paper, break the pen. The cupbearer is here, jug in hand. Meet us in the land of insight, camped under ecstasy's flag. Welcome to Contemplative Poetry Sunday, a day that we hope will be a rest for you as we celebrate Labor Day. Let us rest in this. We celebrate poetry today, poems and their creators thereof. We invite you into the experience, letting the words and the images and the voices and the music fill your hearts. We will hear some original poems. We will hear some poems written by other people, by our friends and our family, and poems as song, love letters to our ears and to our souls. Come, let us worship together this morning.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing our opening hymn, number 1010 in your teal hymnal, We Give Thanks. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
Good morning. Today I'm reading this poem in celebration of Labor Day and those who choose to say no to the unrelenting demands of capitalism and the culture of shame and greed that it creates. This is Calculations by Tina Schumann from her book Praising the Paradox. Myself, the abridged, the novel that never was, subtracted, abbreviated, a subtitle of self. So soon to be the slightest signal of a woman, draped in my tattered flag, holding a box of zeros and a mouthful of air. When the end comes, it won't matter. In between, I will have thought myself large, whole, my travels far, experiences grand, many stories to tell, and so on. But what emancipation to be diminished, reduced to the absolute, a room deprived of its contents, melting ice at the bottom of someone's glass, and the tipped bottle and its residual remains. What delicious deliverance, what radiant resignation to be so much less. What delicious deliverance, what radiant resignation to be so much less than I could have ever hoped for.
Giving is a spiritual practice through which we put our values into action. Each Sunday, our congregation dedicates 100% of its contributions to a local social justice organization or activity. In addition to the plate, online giving is available using the QR code on the donations box just outside the sanctuary or using the text instructions shown on the screen. If you wish to make a payment toward your pledge or contribute to church operations, make a note in the subject line or use an envelope available at the donation box. There are many ways we love and support our community. This week, the funds from Share the Plate go to the Minister's Discretionary Fund. This fund is used to support members and friends of the neighborhood church community in times of need, whether for an electric bill payment, groceries, a bus ticket, or money for medications. The fund can also be used to help with a scholarship for a youth or adult to attend a conference, and it is funded solely from designated voluntary contributions. We thank you for sharing with this community. Will today's volunteers please bring the plates forward? Thank you for giving generously.
Thank you, Wells, for your improvised piece. It sounded like rain to me. I heard a thunderstorm, and the Midwesterner in me loves that. Speaking of rain, when in April the sweet showers fall and pierce the drought of March to the root, and all the veins are bathed in liquor of such power as brings about the engendering of the flower, when also Zephyrus with his sweet breath exhales an air in every grove and heath upon the tender shoots. Some of you may recognize some of those verses. Perhaps they are familiar to you, potentially like me, if that rang true at all. They were some of the first lines of poetry that you were asked to memorize in Old English. This is, of course, dependent on when and where you went to school. Incidentally, I just went to the Huntington Museum for the first time recently. Yes, that was beautiful, and needless to say, I was much more impressed now at seeing those words written by Chaucer than I was when I was asked to memorize them. In grade school, they meant more to me now, as often time does for us. Despite my earliest attempts at wrestling with and then trying my hardest to ignore poetry, apparently that is a common theme for some of you. Despite those attempts, I later became an avid reader and writer of poetry in Spanish. Primarily thanks to one professor I had, who read a poem out loud in our class that changed the course of my life forever. Thanks to the words of Octavio Paz and Pablo Neruda and others, I fell in love with language, its playfulness, language as a tool of sound and of the heart, language that is words, language that is music, also silence that rests between, and how language can be used as political protest. I became an avid reader of poetry in Spanish first, and then later in English. And sometimes I wonder if reading poetry in Spanish made me slow down and focus more on the individual words and the spaces in between, and also made me extend a little grace to myself when I didn't get it at all. Later, when I taught courses in poetry, I saw the same reaction in my students that I wrestled with occasionally and still wrestle with, discovering the hidden meaning. Like maybe I didn't have all the pieces or someone forgot to tell me what it was all about. Now my relationship to poetry has changed, although occasionally that feeling of missing something, it does pop up from time to time. And in those moments, it's precisely in those moments that I remind myself to let the words wash over me, to be in the moment and live the experience of sound, of texture, of spaces they create. There is something humbling and also transcendent about humans' relationship to poems and their very close siblings, music. Something eternal and also completely new and amazing each time we engage playfully with language and sound. So we extend to you an invitation today as we hear from our poets. Thank you, Grace, for reading first. An invitation to our poets and readers of poetry today as they share with you. Up next, I will invite Alan Freeman and then Lexi Schweed to read.
Good morning. I'm Alan Freeman. Our daughter, Megan E. Freeman, attended Eagle Rock Elementary School, where poets came into the classroom each week to teach poetry, and she'd been a writer ever since. She writes middle grade and young adult fiction, as well as poetry for adults. Also an award-winning teacher, Megan has decades of experience teaching in the arts and humanities and is nationally recognized for presenting workshops and speaking to audiences across the country. Megan has lived in Eagle Rock, Central Ohio, Northern Norway, and on Caribbean cruise ships. Now she lives near Boulder, Colorado. I have 2 poems to read to you this morning from her award-winning verse novel, Alone. This first one serves as an introduction to that book. The title is, "This is not adolescent hyperbole." This is my reality. Alone in this place where I've been surviving on my own for over 3 years with no one but a big, smelly Rottweiler who farts and hogs the covers. You might think I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. I'm not just being dramatic, like my grandma might say. I figured by the time I was a teenager, I'd be thinking about getting my driver's permit, going to dances, playing varsity soccer, and kissing. But instead, I'm thinking about where to find food and fuel and water, and whether to use Mountain Dew to force flush the toilet or to drink, even though it's the color of radioactive urine and probably toxic when ingested over long periods of time. Better to be radioactive or dehydrated? These are the questions that plague my daily existence, at least for now, at least until my parents come back. A 15-year-old girl named Maddie was left alone in her town 3 years ago. No family, no power, no communication, all because of an imminent threat, which she still doesn't understand, to her town, to her country. She steals into the local library and finds the authors of books are her friends. She discovers a poetic friend in Emily Dickinson. The poem is entitled Emily. I hated poetry in school, but for some reason, I love browsing in the poetry section. There's something about poetry being nonfiction, but not factual. The most intimate personal thoughts, things people would never dream of saying out loud in middle school, right there on the page in black and white. I choose books based on the titles, whether the poet's name sounds like people I might like. E.E. Cummings is a rebellious teenager who refuses to follow any rules. And Billy Collins, an 11-year-old kid who lives next door. I wonder if T.S. Eliot is a man or a woman. One day I'll go to college with poetic friends, sit in coffee shops, write stories about the olden days of the imminent threat, the trials and tribulations I endured. I want a poetic friend to keep me company, explore alongside me, help me forage for food and fuel. I run my hand along the spines of books, looking for women's names. I find Emily Dickinson. The book falls open. Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Well, that's true. I've never stopped hoping my parents will come back for me, or at the very least, someone will pass through town and rescue me. But there are many days when the act of hoping feels even more difficult than the never-ending work of gathering food and fuel. And if Emily Dickinson is right, and hope is a bird perching in my soul, then my hope hovers on the verge of flying away at any moment. Thank you.
Hi. So I'm using my phone. I forgot I don't have a printer. Okay, so this is an original poem of mine. I believe, I forget where I write some of my poems, but I believe this is one that I actually wrote in the Writers group many years ago, probably when Ruth was running it. And today actually the Writers group is happening, shameless plug, at 11 or a little after the service, a few minutes after the service in room 23. So, but this is an original poem of mine. It's called Road Trip. The longest of journeys starts with a mere step in a new direction. If you spend your time looking around you, you're likely to walk into that huge tree that's right in front of you. If you look too far ahead of you, you're likely to trip over the roots below your feet. If you worry about tripping over every root or hole, you'll miss out on the scenery. And if you're too busy looking at the scenery, you'll miss out on the beautiful details of the old tree right in front of you. Life is made up of the past, the present, and the future. They're all a part of us, together and separately. Paying attention to one only makes you miss what the others have to offer. Life's not a math formula. You can't figure it out. But why would you want to? Thank you.
At this moment, we invite Dr. Deidre Price to come and read her piece, our social justice coordinator.
It is absolutely wonderful to be with you this morning and to share a poem with you. Allow me to give some brief context about the poem. Nearly a year ago, I was watching Representative Hakeem Jeffries deliver a powerful speech to the 118th Congress when he assumed the role of House Minority Leader. Representative Jeffries was brilliant and inspiring to me so immensely. Within his magnificent speech, he effortlessly integrated a to Z poem. Some of the verses he said were benevolence over bigotry, the Constitution over the cult, governing over gaslighting, inclusion over isolation, knowledge over kangaroo courts, and maturity over Mar-a-Lago. It was just outstanding, and I have probably watched it 40 to 50 times. And while listening to him, I thought, one day, I am going to write an A to Z poem. Well, in June, James Coombs, the president of the Board of Trustees, asked me if I would deliver the benediction for the Juneteenth commemoration. I acquiesced, but after writing the benediction and even delivering it, I felt I had not brought it to its full completion. It took me about 4 weeks to rework it. I kept the same thrust and tenor and some of the same verses. What was once called benediction A to Z is now called sugar uncoated A to Z. Audacious and courageous ancestors freed themselves over arrogance anchored and moored to the shores of a divided America. Basking in folk-telling tales about powerful rituals and rich traditions over books banned by those who do not read. Challenging the deceptive innocence of Jane Crow's South over consistently emasculating the will of our people, drenched in the flawless beauty and antiquity of Blackness over defunding our future and weaponizing our past. Endurance and indestructibility over elimination and erasure, fully and sufficiently human over 41 shots in the unarmed, crying out for mama, gasping for more than 40 acres of autonomy over glaring colonizers besotted with occupied lands. Hallelujah, touching the hem of grace over hope falling faster than faith. Inclusivity intricately braided in America's values over infusing ignorance into institutional policies and practices. Joy refreshed and reinvigorated over justified impunity that is the breathtaking knee on our neck. Keepers and defenders of historical facts over knowledge that is not truth. Love flirting with compassion over liberated hate that lingers and drips with rage. Mesmerizing bravery over menacing actors whose ships wrecked enslaved bodies. Nestled in the warmth of diversity over nostalgia coursing through the cold veins of inequity. Obsessed with honeyed kisses of peace and harmony, smothered in love, tough and sweet, over oppressive systems that betray each of us. Power that amplifies the voice of those fringed on the edge of inhumanity, over precariously perched in intoxicating privilege. Quietly planning how to restore the best of we and us, over quarreling about our body, our choice, and why Black lives matter. Resisting preconceived notions over reinforcing false narratives, standing in community over surrendering to silence that is the root of complicity, treading on the toes of manufacturers of violence, over triggered hands locked and loaded, gunning for mass destruction of safe havens, unfettered access to our histories, over unbridled racism as soulless as it is heartless, victorious disruptors, methodical and tenacious, over veiled suppression that is subtle and painstakingly embroidered in the fabric of law and disorder. Wisdom and yes, wokeness over white nationalist allegiance to a whitewashed ideology bathed in the brutality of ethnic cleansing. Xylophones delight in strumming our heartstrings over xenophobes ranting and raging about the unknown, yearning to cultivate gardens that we may never cherish, but will seed bountiful bouquets to the next generation, over yoke to a legacy of devouring our innocence and labor. Zero hoarding of power and wealth, overzealous white supremacists threatened by our accomplished achievements and emancipated voices demanding equitable political, economic, and social power. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of the poets and the readers today who have shared. I will share with you a poem by Pablo Neruda. As I named him one of the influences in my life, it seems that we would be incomplete unless I recited some of his poetry. I'm going to read it first in Spanish as it was written. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Pablo Neruda was a Chilean poet. And so as a reminder, as we contextualize ourselves with this poem, that Chile is on the other side of the planet where it is currently winter. So our seasons are flip-flopped. I will first read it in Spanish and then in English. So I invite you, if you do not speak Spanish, to let the words sit with you. You may hear a word or two you understand, because Pablo Neruda was famous, his poetry is still famous for being very accessible. So let's see, as we read through it together, what words resonate with you. Oda al tomate. La calle se llenó de tomates. Mediodía, verano, la luz se parte en dos mitades de tomate. Corre por las calles el jugo. En diciembre se desata el tomate, invade las cocinas, entra por los almuerzos, se sienta reposado en los aparadores, entre los vasos, las mantequilleras, los saleros azules. Tiene luz propia, majestad benigna. Debemos, por desgracia, asesinarlo. Se hunde el cuchillo en su pulpa viviente. Es una roja víscera, un sol fresco, profundo, inagotable. Llena las ensaladas de Chile. Se casa alegremente con la clara cebolla y para celebrarlo se deja caer aceite, hijo esencial del olivo, sobre sus hemisferios entreabiertos. Agrega la pimienta, su fragancia, la sal, su magnetismo. Son las bodas del día, el perejil levanta banderinas, las papas hiervan vigorosamente, el asado golpea con su aroma en la puerta. Es hora, vamos. Y sobre la mesa, en su cintura del verano, el tomate, astro de tierra, estrella repetida y fecunda, nos muestra sus circunlocuciones, sus canales, la insigne plenitud. la abundancia, sin hueso, sin corazón, sin escamas ni espinas, nos entrega el regalo de su color fogoso y la totalidad de su frescura. Ode to Tomatoes, translated by Margaret Sayers Pedan. The street filled with tomatoes, midday, summer, light is halved like a tomato. Its juice runs through the streets. In December, unabated, the tomato invades the kitchen. It enters at lunchtime, takes its ease on countertops, among glasses and butter dishes and blue salt cellars. It sheds its own light, benign majesty. Unfortunately, we must murder it. The knife sinks into the living flesh, red viscera, a cool sun, profound, inexhaustible. It populates the salads of Chile. Happily, it is wed to the clear onion, and to celebrate the union, we pour oil, essential child of the olive, onto its halved hemispheres. Pepper adds its fragrance, salt its magnetism. It is the wedding of the day. Parsley hoists its flag, potatoes bubble vigorously, and the aroma of the roast knocks at the door. It's time. Come on. And on the table at the midpoint of summer, the tomato, star of earth, recurrent and fertile star, displays its convolutions, its canals, its remarkable amplitude and abundance. No pit, no husk, no leaves, no thorns. The tomato offers its gift of fiery color and cool completeness.
Our closing hymn is number 326, and your gray hymnals are on the screens above. Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing number 326, Let All the Beauty We Have Known.
Let all the beauty we have known illuminate our hearts and minds. Rejoice in wonders daily shown, in faith and joy and love that binds. We celebrate with singing hearts the loveliness of sky and earth, the inspiration of the arts, the miracle of every birth. Life's music and its poetry surrounds and bless us through our days. For these we sing in harmony, together giving thanks and praise.
A final poem that will serve as a benediction and a chalice extinguishing for us. And I will share with you that this poem was, the final lines at least, read to us at the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee at the end of every service that the Reverend Drew Kennedy officiated and led. And as a consequence, it sits with me in my heart in a very special place. I suspect some of you will recognize it. And if so, I invite you to say the words along with me if you know them and would like to. The Summer Day by Mary Oliver. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean the one who has flung herself out on the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't exactly know what a prayer is, but I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?